There's a laundry list of things that AI has really taken from us. And while I often tout the praises of AI and how much positivity it brings to our development, there are some things that I wish we didn't have to sacrifice as a result. The feeling of fixing a bug pre-AI can never be felt again. I remember spending hours reading code that I had written myself, trying to uncover things that I wrote. And when I read through my own code base, I'm like, who wrote this? But then I remember that I wrote it. And after 2 hours of looking up and down the code, scanning every single line, every function, putting console logs, every goddamn other step, finally uncovering the bug and fixing the bug. The amount of dopamine that was felt is something that you unfortunately likely never experience again now that we have AI tools. While there are times you do need to wrestle with the AI, instead of fixing a bug, it is guiding the AI to do so. And this just does not hit as hard. I don't think it ever will. The value of GitHub, there was a point in time where every repo was a badge of honor. It's like you uncovered a treasure chest of code, often completely jumbled. Even if it was spaghetti code, you were still uncovering something that felt magical. It was something you could put on your resume, and it was actually taken somewhat seriously. Right? If I saw a project on a resume, I knew you wrote it. I knew you coded it up, and it was all you. When I see a project on your resume now, I kind of just assume this. And that's not to say it doesn't take a lot of work. Definitely with AI, you still end up spending a lot of time working on projects. But unfortunately, we're in an era where there's just so much junk as a result of the early onset of AI. Right? It's kind of like how YouTube, when it first started off, the quality barrier went up over time. It used to be you could just straight up upload 2 FPS camera footage, and it was like we were watching a movie compared to everything else that was on there. And nowadays the quality has gone up so freaking high. My videos are absolute dog, and there's definitely still a lot of dog water videos on the internet. But when you're looking at top subscribed channels, whether it be in the development space or anywhere else, they have high editing budget, high recording budget. Me personally, I whip these up. You're never gonna get to the higher echelons of YouTube. This is where we're at right now with GitHub repos. We're at the early set. Obviously GitHub has been around for a long time. Now we're really in a new era where the quality bar is just gonna start off terrible, which is where we're at now, and over time it will ramp up. And it makes me wonder and wish we had something like an in-between repo. Maybe somebody has some startup idea, but I think it would be really cool if GitHub was for straight production-worthy code only, to where we can link it on a resume and people take it serious. And then there's an in-between repo where it's, you know, the basic garbage in-between step. Because right now, right, it's hard to decipher what's garbage and what's not with GitHub. There's just too many. I feel like if we had a freaking car show type of repo storage where only the, you know, fine-tuned products come in. This would be nice, right? It'd be nice to have a place where we can link it on a resume and not feel like it's just going to be laughed at and thrown out. But this is the reality. This is what we have given up. So I wanted to include that. Being a genius to non-geniuses. Now what I mean by this, dude, my dad, he just hit 50 years old and he's addicted to vibe coding. He calls me up every other day about projects he's working on. He's talking to me about Obsidian, anti-gravity, talking about agentic stuff. Like he's fully immersed into the AI world, and he's never touched code in his life. And so pre-AI, you know, it was like, you're a genius. But now he knows, right? He has a taste of it. He knows how much work goes into these apps. It's kind of like when somebody has a PC issue in your household. This is my rendition of a computer. This is a CD-ROM. Fortunately, in the hardware realm, vibe coding hasn't touched yet. And so there is still some sense of this. Still get to feel like tech support. And it feels good, right? When somebody has a computer issue and all you ended up doing was restarting the computer and you feel like a god, this feels great. A lot of the times you could feel smart to non-smart people with very bare minimum. That's gone now, at least in the software realm. Flow state. Now I will say I do personally still hit flow state with AI, but not nearly at the level that I did pre-AI. Dude, pre-AI, you pretty much had to enter flow state to accomplish anything. Kind of going back to fixing the bug, the only way you could fix this bug is if you were completely 100% locked in. There was no getting away. Nowadays, you can kind of get away with just sending a prompt, going for a freaking walk, then coming back, and technically you haven't lost any progress. Your productivity didn't go down from this interaction. Sometimes. There are times where really, if you're doing a lot of back and forth prompting, you do kind of want to get into a flow state. I find it hard to stay in the mindset of prompting if I go for this walk. Definitely still some flow state that I achieved through the prompt, but nowhere near at the level that was being achieved with coding. Absolutely not. Although we'll never fully get these back, I think it's on us to find a way to enjoy it again. There's this article here that I kind of want to quickly go through. It's from Jonathan Fulton, post on Medium. I'll add a link in the description. He starts off by saying, you know, I used to guard my flow like a dragon guards gold. Block the calendar calendar, disable Slack, close every tab except the code. Get in the zone, stay in the zone, and protect the zone at all costs. That's how I shipped my best work. Now he shows kind of how his workflow was pre-AI and post-AI. And you can see here in the before AI, right, he'd start typing, he would hit a snag, such as syntax, library, or whatever error, and he'd have to, break his flow. And this sucked, and it still sucks. Nobody wants to have this dissonance. And so the benefit that AI gives us, right, we don't get the feeling of fixing a bug, but we also don't get as much context break. He finishes his article by saying, we're only a year into the AI coding revolution. This is a bit wrong. I think the article was posted this year. I would argue the AI coding revolution really started probably about 2023. He says, the flow states are already transforming. I suspect the programmers who thrive in this era won't be the ones who type the fastest. They'll be the ones who can sustain architectural thinking for hours at a time. Now, I've always said that really, to me, the people that could win out ultimately are the ones who are good at communication, at least in type form, right? English majors have a massive advantage. They don't even realize. If you can clearly articulate your ideas through the prompt, at least in the AI coding space, that is a huge advantage. I think the ideal world, you're an English major with an engineering background, but really you can't have both typically. You could, but most people don't. And so if you're an engineer, if you're trying to level up, you should really focus in on how you can communicate yourself clearly over text. And then it goes both ways, right? Because if you know English really well, but you don't know how a scalable system is engineered, your prompts are just not going to be as effective, right? So these two things culminate into an effective prompt. And he mentions, typing fast won't really benefit you, but it kind of does actually. And the reason I say this is because there's a certain amount of latency, right? When you're thinking of an idea and you're translating it onto the screen, right? There's a definite latency that happens here. And if your brain is so worried about typing, it's going to get in the way. You're not going to really effectively deliver from the brain to the on-screen. The idea that you just had, it is in the trash as soon as you're worried about your typing. But if you're at a point where, you're typing at 80 to probably at least 120 words per minute, that idea is straight into the prompt. You're ready to go and you're ready to move on to the next task. So I would say typing fast does help, but that's not really the point of the argument here. And so where am I getting at? Well, as I mentioned, whichever camp you're in, at the end of the day, we're trying to produce a product. I think it's on us as engineers, find a way to enjoy it again. Yes, we'll never get the feeling of fixing a bug the way we had pre-AI. Yes, GitHub will never feel the same. These things will never come back. There's nothing we can do. Cat is out of the bag. But what we can do is we can chip away at our workflow and find a way to enjoy it the way we used to. Right, I was talking about flow state. There's a way you can achieve flow state in agentic coding using more agents, right? If you have enough money to do so. Thinking about the next prompt. I could list off a few things where really you do end up entering a flow state with AI coding. There's also a world, where you don't need to use AI for everything. One of the things the article mentions is how you leave the flow state when you're coding. And he mentions, hitting a snag and context switching. AI gets this part now. It can do this part for you. And so if you're using AI as a pure assistant, guess what? All you have to do is the fun stuff. He even bold text this, right? AI agents don't interrupt the flow. They absorb the interruption. This is a wonderful quote. If you're in the camp where you're anti-AI, which everyone is in their right to do, and you're using it as an AI agent assistant instead of taking on the entire steering wheel, you can still enter this flow state absolutely, because you're no longer having to get weighed down by documentation and searching for a silly bug because of a human error. And so in both camps, you can achieve flow state. And then for the rest of these, really, it's about finding a way to get this enjoyment in a post-AI era. It's on you as a software engineer to find the fun again. And me personally, I'm still doing this day to day, right? I've yet to feel what it feels like to fix a bug with AI at the same level. But I am getting a sense of dopamine that I get from single prompting something. Concept of one-shotting early AI, I think it was frowned upon because it meant that you were working on something really simple. But now it's like, hey, if you really doctor up a good prompt, this is an achievable goal even for a complex thing. That can give you a good feeling. There's a lot of things that you can do with AI coding that gets you this enjoyment. You can sit around and complain about all the things that AI has taken away from us, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change the end goal here. Find a way to make it still benefit your workflow, right? Don't hinder your ability to deliver just because you refuse to use AI. Use it as an assistant. Have it do the things that get in your way. If you're pro AI, find ways that you can contribute manually that don't have a negative impact on the end result and allow you to achieve these things that you miss and you enjoyed doing manual code. At the end of the day, the goal is to feel like this with coding. Sitting around and complaining about it won't get you there. Try new things, try new frameworks. I know me personally, I've moved around a lot with my workflow. I started off with Visual Studio Code and GitHub Copilot, absolute caveman of a workflow. Now I'm using Pi and Codex and all these other tools. And so I've found things that have given me more enjoyment. And likely when I check back with myself a year from now, a lot of things will still change, right? I think the things that you enjoy to do now, you'll realize, hey, maybe this way is better. If you're doing something and you're not enjoying it anymore, maybe you should just change how you're approaching the problem. Change what tools you're using, because not everyone enjoys the same tool. It goes the same way with models, right? Just because Opus 4.8 or GPT 5.5, or I guess Fable 5 now, just because these are flagship models does not mean you need to use these. In some cases, you might prefer a smaller model with more constraints. Some people work better like this, right? When you know the model you're using is limited, it forces you to do the anti-AI coding workflow, which can oftentimes lead to better ideas and better execution. You never know. So don't think that just because this is promoted as the best means it is truly the best in all cases. You might be somebody that benefits from a smaller model. So I encourage you to try new things and see and find what works for you. I'm sad we'll never experience these again, but I'm also excited to find what I do enjoy when it comes to AI coding. And I hope 10 years from now, I can look back on them. And instead of looking at this list and missing it, I'll look at it and I'll say, hey, I'm very much glad we do not have to deal with this stuff anymore.